Hey, it's Petey back at you, and I wanted to go through the process of what I do to make a guitar pedal. So the first thing we would do is type in, let's say we're going to make a governor. So we would type in Marshall Governor Vero. Okay, Vero is short for stripboard layout. So here we find it. It exists. So we would go over here, and oh my goodness, there's a Marshall Governor. So we're going to go ahead and download this image. I'm going to make a folder. We'll make this folder called AGUV, and we're going to save that and then grab our image. Now I'm using a software called View from my photo editor. So with that, I can hit Control Y and then blow that image up. Although what you really need to do is go to Image and resize, and then something like 300% would make it that big, and then you can go ahead and save that file. So then you've got this massively enlarged image with just the information you need to see, just much easier on your eyes when you're rather than looking at this small image. Now another thing that I like to do is take this section here and we reduce that, and then we'll go ahead and do it the proper way of resize, resample to 300%. And then what I like to do here is for the links, we'll go ahead and I'll go in here and I'll select this area and I'll hit Control C for copy. And then I will go in there, select that, and copy and paste that over there. Then we'll go ahead and save this. Okay. Now, undo what I just did. So that would be for the links. The links are these wires that we cut in. They call them links. So then you would have an image saved that you would name links. And you would cover that up where it says cuts. You could copy and paste this section like I did if you want to be fancy. Or you could just go in here and do one of these, Control X, and black it out. So you know when this comes up, this is the image that we need to use for the links. Okay, now let me Control Z, bring that back. So then for the cuts, you need to do that on the back of the board. So what I do is I do an H command, which flips it horizontally just like you would flip the board in real life when you go to make the cuts. Special thanks to Pink Jimmy Photon for this tip. So you go ahead and do that, and then what I do here is I will select this area and H that, and then that flips that. So then I would go in here where it says the links. This isn't links, it's only for the cuts. So I would go in here and Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste. And then I have an image that it just tells me exactly what this is. It's for the cuts, which are these that are done when we flip the image. So I would save this image. So what I end up with in my folder, I've done all this work already, is here's my layout file. My next one is the flipped image that has the cuts. And the next image is, again, flipped from the top view for the links, or the wires that we solder in on the normal top side. And then I would have my normal image, and then an additional image with that clipping switch that's just blown up. Because looking at this with my 40-year-old eyes, we'll say, is a little bit of a challenge, but when we blow it up like this, it gets real easy for me to see. And what I would probably do in here is just goes to show how anal retentive I am, is I would put huge black blocks in to show me where my negative side is, so I wouldn't be able to miss that because I'm half retarded. Mentally challenged, we want to say. So that's the first step, and then in the second step, let's say I grab my PCB and I pull this up, And typically I do my cuts first is what I'll do. Cuts. So I would open this image, flip the board over, and then use a drill bit style tool to remove the strip area in all of these cuts. Actually, what I do is I mark these with a Sharpie. And then I will switch seats. I get my wife to sit down. I'll go, okay, starting off, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows down. There's a 2 gap, and then we got our first cut. Okay? And then I will mark that off and say, now that cut, I'm looking at it, and we starting from the left, it's 1, 2, 3 is the cut. Now I'm on it, and we got 1, 2, 3, I hit the bottom. Going back to that cut, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I hit the top. Then we know that that is perfectly spaced from all 3 directions. And you can do this by yourself, but it's nice for me having a helper to do it. So then the rest of this process is I will go, okay, I'm on that first cut. We go 1 to the right, 1 up, and then I'm in the another cut. 1 up, 2 up, 3 up, and 1 over. I got another cut. Going back to that previous row, cut number 2, dropping down 1, 2. Well, I would just say at that point, it's at the bottom. Going in on the bottom row, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm on a cut. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 up, I got a cut. Then kitty quarter diagonal to the left, 1 up and 1 left over. We got another cut. So continuing through that method of going through carefully, and when you've marked them with a Sharpie, you haven't done any damage. If I screw up, and sometimes, believe me, I do, you just take a Q-tip with some rubbing alcohol and apply that. You can erase whatever marks you've made on the board and then just either use a fan or wait a minute for it to dry off, the rubbing alcohol to dry off, and then you're free to go ahead and continue marking. So when we finish doing our cuts on the back, we want to switch over to this front image for the links, and then it's basically the same thing. It's like, you would start at the bottom. And see, the thing is, I know you would be tempted to go, oh, it's that row that has all the links. Well, I don't. What I do is I will start fresh, count it off on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we go up 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 5. Okay. So I would mark that off. Then at that point, what I would do is I would get a needle, and I would stick the needle through this hole and turn the board over. And when I turn the board over, I should see this strips here. And then you know everything is kosher. So that's just another little double test that I like to do. I would do that again here at this point. So we have this marked off here, and then, you would go, well, kitty corner, and then it's a 4, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4 space jumper. So then when we have that marked, you would say, well, dropping down 1 row, and then over and over again, we got our, it's a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would be, it's got a 1 gap on the bottom and a 6 gap on the top. Let's see if I hide that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then finally, taking a look at this, this is how we would, after we have the cuts cut on the back side of the board, and we've soldered our wires in on the front, and then like stuck a pin through here. I would probably do that, but when I had it marked off with Sharpie in here, but I hadn't soldered the wire in yet, I would stick a Sharpie through at this point and make sure that this is a cut. Stick a pin through this hole here and make sure that this is all lined up. So when we've got all of our cuts have been cut and they are tested out, that's another thing that I should have mentioned is I will take my multimeter, which has a continuity test. It sounds like that. When you press the probes together, you get the music. And what I would do is I would take the probe and set one. Let's go and actually find our. Do we need to find the better? Yeah, here we go. You would place one probe here and one probe here and here if you get a beep. And if you do, that means you didn't drill this out enough. So you would go through, test each one of these for throughput, meaning you would start off with a probe here and a probe here, and then move them down, move them down, move them down. Put a probe here and a probe here, a probe here and a probe there. And you should also test your technique. You know, put a probe here and a probe here, or you know, you could test your you could put a probe here and a probe here and see if this is going through to test your links. But you just want to make sure that you got this set up right and that your probes are fully connected. If they come loose, you'll get it, you know, intermittent type thing. So you want to make sure that it's working good, and then test all of these to make sure that you've gone deep enough with the drill and there isn't just a little hair of conductive material still connecting, because I've done that more than once. I've done that. You can use magnification and look at it. Is another way to do that, and you'll catch it if you have proper lighting and magnification. But the real safest way to do it, and especially if you don't trust your eyes and you wear glasses, is to test with a multimeter. Now this here, the main thing, this is what we call tell me a story. So I'll tell you a story. Pretend that you're snuggled in bed. You got dreams of germanium transistors in your head. So we have this first row is for wiring, so forget about that. So we go in one on the bottom row. Going up, we've got a 4. So it's a 47K resistor that's a 4. It's got a 4 buddy. 1, 2, 3, 4 buddy with a 2 gap. And we don't go over on the top, we restart on the bottom. So next row, cracking off, we've got a 2M2, which is a 4, and then there's a capacitor, which is a buddy that goes all the way up to the top. Next row resetting, there's a 3 gap with a 3 capacitor and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2K2 up to the top. Next row we got a 1 gap, there's a 5 with a 2 with a 3 gap. Next row there's 4 with the chip, which is 4, and then we got an 8 sideways 4 with a buddy 4 working back. And then coming over on the next row bottom, forgetting about these two, we have a 2, which is a 10 UF electro with the ground facing down, a 2 gap, and then we got the chip, and then there's our ether, our 4 buddies that are coming in with a 1 gap. Next row we got a 1 gap, then there's a 4 jumper, there's a 4 buddy and a 2 gap, and we got a 1 gap with a 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is a 47K. Then there's a 3 gap. Next row we got a 2 gap with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's a buddy 4, which is a 100U with the minus side facing up. So this is a you got one going eat and one going and on our electropolarities. Then we've got a 2 gap with a buddy 5, meaning it's identical next to it, and then there's a 4 gap on the top. So we got a 1 gap with a 3, and then a 1 gap with a, looks like a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with a 1 gap. Then there's a 2 gap with a huge, is that an 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with a 1 gap. Next row, we got a 3 with a buddy of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Next row, we've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a 6 with a 3 buddy and a 2 gap. Then there's a 3 gap with a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Excuse me, a 6 with a 2 buddy, all the way up to the top. Next row, there's a, is that a 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with a 4 gap. Then there's a 2 with a 2 gap and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with a 1 gap. So basically I go in with by myself, and I will put a dot here with a Sharpie and a dot here with a Sharpie, and then connect those lines. And I'll do the same thing here and put a line. So pretty much the PCB gets marked out everywhere that a component is. It has a line with these dots are done well. I stick the Sharpie in there and spin it, and then I'll just lightly try to put a line in here. And so when you have it marked out like that and you have someone handing you the parts, or even by yourself, you can very easily determine where they go. And especially if you're doing that tell me a story technique between the two people, if you have a helper, or by yourself, if you repeat that process and you're double checking your work as you go. So pretty much, like I said, when I do it, I'll do it by myself. Then I will double check it with two people. And what you do when you double check it is you have the person holding the PCB that's been marked tell the story back to the person that's looking at the screen. So that way, if the person reading the PCB says, okay, there's a 1 gap with a 4, and then a buddy 4, and then a 2 gap, and then we come over here and there's a 6, and it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, you'll catch your error that way. So we double check it after it's been marked. And I mark it really carefully, and then after it's been marked, we double check it, and then as we put the parts in place, we double check it. So the margin for error when we're doing this in this method is it's the best way that I've come up to do it. And you don't need a person to do this with you. You can do all this in your head and develop that type of language that helps you to understand, and like a shorthand, a mental shorthand type of language for reading these layouts and printed circuit board varos, they call them. So next up, I'll give you an example of us putting one of these together. It's not very exciting, and the audio is kind of quiet. You can only hear one of us because one of us is kind of quiet, but that's always my fault. So anyway, you guys enjoy your buildings. If you got any questions or comments, please feel free. And I'd appreciate if you would like this video and comment, share it. So thanks a lot.
So here we are building a pedal. You can see I've got the PCB marked out. I've got a good work area with just the right tools that I need. There's my flux, there's my solder, there's my iron going. I've got proper lighting. I've got just basically surrounded by lights. And the most important ingredient is my Jawa helper here, who is testing each component for proper value on the digital meter. And we do what's called tell me a story. So she's got this image, blown up image of the PCB, and that's how we pre-marked our PCB board. So she can just hand me a part and tell me kind of where it goes. So I'm going to just film this process for posterity's sake. This is how we build the pedal here. All right, so where did we leave off?
1.5K is that.
Okay, and that's the 68N.
It's next to the 680R.
The 7 or 8?
7 with a 1 gap at the top and a buddy 4 at the bottom. Oh, above the 68N, yeah.
A buddy 3?
Buddy 3, yeah.
So it's a buddy 3 at the bottom and a 1 gap at the top, and it's a 7?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. One down. Okay, so what do we got?
Okay, next to the 68N is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's a 680R. And above it is a 3 buddy, and then a 2 gap.
So it's a 3 buddy and a 2 gap. And this is like row 17.
5 from the end.
It's always good to have background music. We're listening to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Okay, so that was the 680R. Now we're looking at the 1K.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a 3 gap on the bottom and a 2 buddy on the top.
Yeah.
So as I've gone through the stages of this, we use this type of double checking and working in partnership to ensure that if there is an error made, the other person will catch it. Someone will say it's a 4 gap or it's a 4, and they say no, that's a 3.
Okay, that's a 100 and there's a 4 gap at the top.
It's a 100 with a 4 gap, but there's a long one, huh?
When it's the third from the end.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what's nice about working in partnership with someone is it's less work for me, and I've got someone who, if I do make a casual mistake, that mistake will be pointed out before it ever comes to an actual point of error. As we check our work every step of the way, we double check our work. So it's literally error proof. So this is
22K. It's like
there's a 1 gap at the top.
and a 2 gap and then a 2 buddy at the bottom.
Okay. The way that was marked, I could have screwed that up, but you told me a 2 gap, and that let me know exactly where it needed to go. So
It's a 6.
it's a 6.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There you go. So that's it for the resistors. We did almost the whole right half, almost this whole half here. We did for you in that couple of minutes there. So that's how I build a pedal here.